our golden period because we didn't have a lot of competition at that time. So there was a lot of activity, and John Carpenter was he was a veteran of effects movies, and he'd done movies with rubber and with various effects, so it was easy to communicate with him. The big pièce de résistance actually was Lopin and his glowing head, you know, which was very interesting. I mean, and James Hong is a great actor. He's this great character actor who, you know, he's just a really great actor, and really got into the part. And John really liked him, and he was cantankerous, you know, and he'd been in 1,000 movies, you know, so he was a real pro. And so we had to cast his face and then make his whole face and make it transparent so that we could light it from within, and you'd see all the veins. And so a number of situations culminating in the scene where he lifts his hand and then his fingernail comes out, and of course the light that was inside the head was so hot that we had to shoot it quick because it would start smoking. I mean, it had like about 1,000-watt bulb inside the head, you know, or maybe brighter, I can't remember now. But one of the interesting units in the movie was the big floating eyeball monster, which had all these eyes, and that thing must have cost $100,000 to make that thing. I mean, it was just, it had, you know, all these eyes, and it had little bladders for making the cheeks pulse, and the mouth would open, and it had expression, you know, you could, and when the mouth opened, there's another eye there, and acrylic castings, polished, and then the irises were all done with paintings, and then layered in front more acrylic pieces that were molded and polished and everything. So they were quite nice eyes, and they were all different sizes, and there were little protrusions that would have an eye in them, and they could move around. And so behind this thing, and then we had, in order to shoot it, we put it sticking out in front of a little blue screen, which had a hole in the middle, and then behind that were about 15 people with levers and with their hands in there moving things around, and the eyes were blinking, and so it was extremely complicated, you know, and it's all worked out and choreographed so that, you know, you're out in front calling numbers, and then the people on the levers and everything that are operating, the eyes blinking and the cheeks and the expressions of the face are watching video monitors from a camera on the front to keep track of what they're doing, you know. So that was a technique that we used, you know, quite a lot. And going from, we set the shop up on Ghostbusters, and Steve had been there through that, Steve Johnson, and so he wound up being the head of the monster shop. And then we also had the scene where we swam through the corpses, and so we built all those corpses in the rubber shop, and for years actually we had a I don't know who, I mean, when I kind of sold everything off, you know, I don't know where all those went, but the corpses were we had a rack of them up above the model shop that was just, you know, lined up with corpses, you know, from various movies. The sewer monster was extremely complicated, and it was like this huge, ugly thing, kind of a half fish, half dragon, you know, and the thing is that for the amount of work that went into it, that was one of those things that got about a half a second. I mean, it was like you only saw that thing for maybe, you know, what number of frames. It was expected to be involved in more, but just as I think maybe one of the better examples of less is more is an Alien. You know, I mean, you see, I mean, when you leave the theater, you don't realize that you've only seen the alien for about 2 seconds, you know. But that's all you needed. I mean, it's all build up. And for Alien 3, Fincher had this idea of doing a whippet in an alien suit. And I mean, this was the most absurd dailies you ever saw. I mean, this dog runs out, all tricked out in this, you know, Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff special alien suit. And it was so stupid looking. I mean, we were on the floor laughing. I mean, it was like 86, that idea, you know. The suspension of disbelief that, you know, that you were able to do, and you can still watch King Kong and suspend disbelief because you get caught up in the story and you forgive the fur flopping around and the kind of, you know, the stop motion-y action. I mean, my wife bawls whenever she sees that movie. She says, "Oh, I don't want to see that again." But I mean, the audience now has become so sophisticated that even when you're you need to suspend disbelief in a scene like that. You have to really be. If you can see that it's a dog in an alien suit. The Wild Man was like another one there was an enormous amount of preparation. I mean, punching all the hairs in every pore, you know, and you saw it just for a moment on the end of the movie. The rubber was really good. Had a really good prosthetic crew. It was like about 15 or 20 people working on it, I think at least, and maybe more at one point. Behind the scenes, Cimino had just done this movie, which had angered the Chinese community in San Francisco to a fever pitch, I think. And so there was this real paranoia about doing a movie about Chinatown. And the set was just unbelievable. You felt like you were in Chinatown, and it was really amazing. You couldn't believe that you couldn't go in and order something or buy some herbs at the herb shop or whatever. And they brought a bunch of people from Chinatown down, had this big sit-down dinner for them to kind of assuage their fears that this was not the movie that was going to make the Chinese community look foolish or bad or anything. And that was one of those things where we kind of, because there was so much stuff in this movie, and the budget was really tight, because it was kind of a so-called low budget. It's about a $20 million budget, I think. So, and in '86, for a lot of effects, that was cheap. And our effects budget was I think it was $1,830,000. Yeah. It's a very tough business to make money in. I mean, it's just so fun to do it as a practitioner, you know. And I got involved in building the company because I needed that optical printer and that weird equipment that you couldn't get anywhere. So we had to build it. And so in order to do this, you had to have a company, and you had to have a machine shop, an electronic shop, and model shop, and engineers, and all these people, you know, that had very peculiar talents. And then, of course, there's the big fight in the big room, you know, which and of course we didn't have any wire removal in those days. I think there were some wire shots, and we had to take some wire out with Vaseline in a couple of shots. And then it culminates because these guys are shooting their light, you know, because Egg Chen is doing his number, and then Lo Pan is doing his number, and then the light crosses, and then all of a sudden they become these mythical Chinese, you know, knights, you know, with big swords, and they're fighting in this kind of fog. That scene, we hadn't really figured out how we were going to do that scene yet, or what exactly John wanted for that one. So when we got to it, we figured, and Boss Studios we were in 3 buildings at that point. We were at our building on Maxella, and then around the corner, about a block away, and I bought a motorcycle to go back and forth. Put about 4 miles on it, you know, and maybe 5. And then we had one building that we rented that was a big stage, and then we had the model shop and the creature shop over on another street. And so we then were able to find, because we were sharing the building, the other end of our building was a dental supply company, and so finally they moved out. And so we were able to capture that, and it was about half an acre. It was about 20,000 square feet additional. So, and then we could just open our building up, and then all of a sudden our big stage was there, and we put the model shop at the end. So, so we had just moved into that stage and painted it black. You know, the guys got the spray paint and painted it, you know, painted it black. So, and so we set up like some platforms about 4 feet up, so we could shoot low, and then had some Orcon projection lamps that I had laying around, and we were using those to backlit, and then we smoked the whole room and backlit the smoke, and then had the guys just in front of each one of the lights, and then we had operators that were trying to follow, you know, them to keep the shards, you know, going towards us, and then so that when they would hit with their swords, then they'd step away from the light, and then you'd get this big flare. And so we got that whole scene, and it was all kind of improvised, you know, once we got the setup, and we would kind of work through and see how the shards and the light was working, and then we would choreograph the movement of the swordsman towards that. And I don't think the scene lasted very long. It was only maybe 15 seconds or 20 seconds or something like that, 25. Anyway, but that's all you need, you know. Sometimes the most memorable effect shot in a movie is only half a second long. I mean, in those days, I mean, to compare that with where we are now, I mean, it's sort of like the blacksmith era. I mean, it's like there was a completely different kind of ingenuity required to solve visual problems than it is today. Although it's still filmmaking, you know. I mean, and still the same kind of cheats and all that kind of the kind of things that you do to get away with certain things. You still use that, and so the basic filmmaking. If you understand filmmaking, that's going to stand you in good stead. But one of the problems, I mean, today is that a lot of the people who are doing work on workstations and you know, which is the way everything is being done now, pretty much, don't have a sense of filmmaking. You know, they haven't seen King Kong, or they haven't seen Citizen Kane, or you know, I mean, they don't. I mean, not that you have to see all these classics, but I mean, there's so many lessons to be learned about filmmaking from that. And there's so many tricks to making a shot work that come out of a real strong background in filmmaking that's kind of missing to some degree.